Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ambo Prince Eric, and in this video we'd like to talk about some new ships going to explain right now in the past updates. Seems I did recording earlier because of my inactivity, but the reason of this was PC issues for replacing motherboard and the graphics card. For my duration of inactivity will be 1.5 months ago, and here we are. I'm finally back, and let's get started for about the topics about the new ships in a closed testing. I hope you can enjoy right now to express my determination for that since the current update 12.11 being released. Before I'm ready to start, so please sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell or the notification icon right now. So let's get on to it. So I'm here right now on the public test server for World of Warships in update 30.0. Okay, so let's get started on. Alright, so the first one, we're headed on to the new ships closed test 12.9 in the closing page of the update 12.8. Was posted on September 8, 2023 about 2 a.m. midnight in Philippine Standard Time. So in this update, in these new ships are coming, we are going to introduce the following ships: the Italian cruiser Francesco Ferruccio, German battleship Scharnhorst 43, Pan-European Norwegian destroyer Stord 43, and American aircraft carriers Yorktown and Essex. The American aircraft carrier Essex has returned to the game testing, accompanied by Yorktown. These ships will be added to the tech tree in the future. Independence, a Tier 6 aircraft carrier, will also enter testing in one of the future upcoming updates. Details about her will be available later. However, these new carriers have lesser attacking potential, but can provide more utility with the new tools. On both Yorktown and Essex have access to one standard squadron and two tactical squadrons with jet-assisted takeoffs, but similarly comes from Soviet aircraft carriers starting Tier 8. The torpedo bombers need less time to reach the optimal speed when dropping torpedoes compared to other carriers, and especially other American carriers. While a single torpedo has a relatively low damage, it is compensated by a high number of torpedoes and they are above average speed. The attack aircraft uses HE rockets with high penetration and fire chance, but the number of rockets per payload is relatively low. As for the dive bombers, they have a relatively low penetration and fire chance. There are numerous bombs per payload. Both tactical squadrons can provide cover for their allies using the smoke curtain generator consumable that was recently introduced in concealed maneuvers. However, in which the new game was introduced in the previous updates at the start of the Spanish cruisers on early access. Additionally, these ships can call for a patrol fighter that arrives much faster compared to most carriers. However, its spotting range is relatively low, similar to BN's fighter. As a result, these fighters take more of a defensive and intercepting role. Okay, I'm gladly ahead for these new ships are coming for that. But in the early 2024, we would like to see ahead for another aircraft carrier in the tech tree. Goes on with a consumables, just like the concealed maneuvers in the previous updates 12.6. For now, the Yorktown Essex are going to be the first iteration right up ahead, but before heading on to the next DevBlog was for Independence. Alright, so let's get started. The American aircraft carrier Yorktown, the Tier 8, the lead ship of the Yorktown class aircraft carriers, named after the Battle of Yorktown, was the final battle of the American Revolutionary War, who fought the newly independent United States and against the British Empire. The Yorktown was entered service in 1937 to 1941, becoming the first U.S. Navy's serial purpose-built aircraft carriers. This design was created within strict framework of international agreements on naval armaments. Nevertheless, American designers managed to make these 280,000-ton aircraft carriers both fast and capable of carrying a large aircrew. In the first year of the war in the public, The Yorktown class aircraft carriers, along with aircraft carriers of Lexington class, constituted the main strike force of the U.S. Navy. Okay, so Yorktown in history was commissioned around in the middle or late 1930s before entering the war of the US in World War II in the Pacific. Additionally, Yorktown, its Enterprise and Lexington are the main striking force at the heads of the line at the beginning of the war against the Japanese. However, Yorktown participated in numerous battles until its end, such as the Battle of the Coral Sea, but he fought them alongside Lexington. Lexington, meanwhile, at the Solomon Islands, but Lexington was sunk. Although Yorktown, meanwhile, finally returned to port and made its repairs on their way preparing another Japanese invasion, the Midway. Unfortunately, the Yorktown was sunk by the Japanese plane bombers that set them on June 4 to 6, 1942, the Battle of Midway, the mark of the turning point of the Pacific War, and the Allies began to similarities of the striking air force will be dominance of the US air superiority for the next 50 years. Although Yorktown was a significant pioneer of the American aircraft carrier at the time, in which the forming of the Essex class aircraft carriers, which is going to be discussed later in this game. So nevertheless, Yorktown was a significant ship of the War Heroes distinction of the US Navy since the start of the war, the Pacific until its end. Her name meanwhile was carried to the Essex class aircraft carriers Yorktown as an Essex class aircraft carriers being entered service during the war. But he made on service the post-war and then the Apollo program until its decommission about 1970s, when she made on the museum ship in Patriots Point in South Carolina. Now, the next one is American aircraft carrier Essex, a Tier 10, formerly a Tier 9 before the update 0.8.0. The first Essex class aircraft carriers were ordered as part of the Navy's expansion program adopted in 1938. The decision to build additional ships in the series was made after the outbreak of the war in the Pacific. Large, fast-moving with powerful air defense capabilities, capable of carrying a quickly airborne or large air group, aircraft carriers of Essex type had another important advantage. They were numerous. Due to a combination of these qualities, they played a major role in the success in the US Navy in the Pacific in the last 2 years in the Second World War. The history, Essex was the largest of the most aircraft carriers ever produced in the US Navy during the war, against the might of the Japanese Empire in the Pacific. Although Essex was the main purpose of this main striking force, which consists of larger amounts of plane can deploy something the fighters, torpedo bombers and dive bombers against strike targets on the Japanese held islands. Essex was a primary focus of this aircraft carrier of the US Navy in the World War II, before the construction and the commission of the famously well-known Midway class aircraft carriers. Well, Essex class aircraft carriers was entered the post-Cold War period and it was modernized with accommodation of the fighter jets. However, due to the lack of sufficient funds, all of the Essex class was decommissioned. But although 4 of the Essex class aircraft carriers were made on as a museum ship, the Intrepid, Hornet, Lexington, and Yorktown being as a museum ship in various location places around US, but originally meanwhile was sunk as to form an artificial reef. For now in the game, Essex is the most recognizable aircraft carriers, as a former Tier 9 now became a Tier 10. Before on update 0.8.0 back in 2019, she was on a Tier 9 with a consumable defensive airfire right now. Although you know that I really understand, I did play Essex for a long time since I mainly played it back in 2020. So I mainly recognize this ship for the while, but I will see up to it in the early access in the next update. Alright, so ship's parameters, The aircraft carrier Yorktown, the tier 8, is gonna be hit points 50,100. Here are the parameters of the Yorktown, but I do not read it entirely. We are gonna need to explain for this showcase build. Here are the tactical dive bombers and tactical attack aircraft, but they not. The torpedo bombers also are available. Both of these tactical planes are gonna be used at later. The tactical planes is gonna be sure right at the time, but engaging the striking force immediately against enemy ships in the game. So be sure to conserve hit points right out on each planes. There are some parameters for the aircraft carrier assets. It's a tier 10, but the hit points is gonna be 59,500. The lowest hit points against Midway is 67,000. They are the tactical attack aircrafts as well, but torpedo bombers and the tactical dive bombers. The consumables on the list is the damage control party, which is automatically activated when the ship is set on fire, and also the fighter as well. All stats are listed without crew and upgrade modifiers, but with the best available modules. The stats are subject to change during the testing. Now, the next one is a tier 7 premium Italian light cruiser Francesco Ferruccio. Francesco Ferruccio is based on 1939 design that envisioned a long-range light cruiser for future Italian operations in the Indian Ocean. One of the features of the 8,000-ton ship was to place all the main caliber artillery, 8 152mm guns and 2 4-gun turrets. Naming cruisers after Italian generals and naval leaders become a tradition in Regia Marina in the late 19th century, and in the 1930s, it became an unwritten rule for ships of the light cruiser class. Following this rule, the ship, which could have been laid down at the turn of the 1930s and early 1940s, was named in honor of Francesco Ferruccio, a 16th century military commander famous in the fight for the independence of Florentine Republic. Ship is armed with 8 152mm main battery guns with great fighting range and quick turret traverse time, but limited fighting angles. The aft end main battery turret can rotate 360 degrees. She has access to HE and SAP shells with flat ballistics that allows her to shoot over long distances. However, her damage per minute is not the highest. Additionally, she is equipped with 2 quadruple torpedo tube launchers. Torpedoes have good range, but the speed and damage are low, but similarly contrast for Italian Tet 3 cruisers. The ship has a full armor and a small HP pool, but high speed and good maneuverability, as well as excellent concealment. She has access to exhaust smoke generator and can choose between a fighter or spotting aircraft as well. There are the ship's parameters as well, so we can look it out for these parameters. The hit points is about 28,400. Firing range of these main battery guns 17.5 kilometers. Sub shells is going to be increases damage tremendously. The penetration is about 42mm. The reload time is about 9.5 seconds. Sigma is 2.0. The consumables are the following available: the damage control party, exhaust smoke generator, fighter or spotting aircraft in the third slot. Since then, the Francesco Ferruccio was made available in the current update, was part of the Salvage for Victory, alongside Defense, Kitakami, and Eli. Now, the next one is the German battleship Scharnhorst 43, a unique historical ship. A member of the Scharnhorst class battleship design, but a counterpart of the Scharnhorst, the premium one. The lead ship in a series of 2 battleships designed for raiding operations entered service a few months before the outbreak of the Second World War. Scharnhorst made her first combat voyage in November 1939, followed by the landings in Norway and raid into the Atlantic Ocean and the breakthrough across the English Channel. In 1943, meanwhile, the battleship was transferred to Norway to counter an Arctic convoys. On December 26, 1943, Scharnhorst was sunk in the battle with the Allied squadron of North Cape, known to be as Battle of the North Cape. Compared to the Scharnhorst, Shanghai's 43 has a shorter firing range, lower accuracy, and slower reload speed. Instead, her secondary guns have a high rate of fire and her torpedoes have a faster reload time. She can also use repair party to restore more HP per second and has a shorter cooldown. Unlike Shanghai's, she doesn't have access to spotting aircraft. Okay, similarly, a contrast from its previous counterpart, Shanghai's that is capable of secondary build, but also have access to the spotting aircraft. But in this ship does not have a spotting aircraft. But in this highly consumable of that is but all it has to do the available consumables is a fighter. But I don't see anything about the mention about engine boost consumable in this ship. But the German battleship can be always do that as secondary build purpose. The hit points is gonna be the same hit points like the Scharnhorst. Main battery is composed the same armament comes with the previous counterpart, about 80.9 km fighting range. The reload time is about 23 seconds. Numerous secondary armaments can be fired HE shells. Became purpose right now for a secondary build. The torpedoes meanwhile has a same. Torpedo tubes is gonna be 2x3 533mm. Range is about 6 kilometers. Maximum damage 13,700. Can only be useful to close combat engagements. But since then, the Scharnhorst 43 was on the current update in the state on the holidays with Santa City in a battle pass, which was a free one. Next one is a pan-European gunboat destroyer Stored 43 at tier 7. The 8 Type S destroyers ordered by the British Admiralty under the War Emergency Program entered service in 1943 to 44. 2 ships of the series were transferred to Royal Norwegian Navy and were named Stored and Swenair. During the Battle of North Cape, Stored was involved in sinking German battleship Scharnhorst. In June 1944, Stored participated in Normandy landings, after which she was in active service for another 15 years, made in its post-war Norway. Stored 43 is an artillery destroyer, and while she is armed with only 4 guns and single turrets, they have good damage per minute and accuracy. Unlike Stored, she has access to AP shells and her torpedoes have shorter range, while a higher speed and deal more damage. The ship has a small HP pool, pretty bad concealment and mediocre speed. She has access to a small generator but lacks on the engine boost. Instead, she has one charge of specialized repair teams that restores considerable portion of HP in a short period of time. Unlikely up ahead, the counterpart of the pan-European gunboat destroyer, the tier 6 Stored. But in this ship, Stored 43 comes in changes. The consumables meanwhile, but usually they use a smoke generator. But in the absence of the engine boost consumable, as well as the specialized repair teams, which can restore large chunks of HP, but only charges is 1. So you better have to conserve this health. So you have to conserve it right now for these repair party charges on it when you use it when the damage goes on the battle. However, the same parameters calls for that from its counterpart, the tier 6 Stored. So that's for the conclusion right now for the close test 12.9 in the closing page of the update 12.8. So let's head on right now for the new ships of close test 12.10. So let's see. Okay, so the next one is new ships close test 12.10 was posted on October 5, 2023 at 7 a.m. on the closing stages of the update 12.9. This time it's gonna be 3 new ships: an American aircraft carrier Independence, Pan-Asia cruiser Tianjin, and American battleship Hood Island. Alright, so the first one is the American aircraft carrier Independence, a tier 6. a fast light aircraft carrier built on the hull of the Cleveland-class light cruiser. 9 carriers of this class entered service in 1943, taking an active part in all U.S. Navy operations in the Pacific during the last 2 years of the Second World War. Independence will join Yorktown and Essex as a part of the upcoming U.S. aircraft carrier Tech 3 line. The ship is armed with torpedo bombers, although what I mentioned about that the concealed maneuvers. Right now, the Independence is the first of the aircraft carriers took place. With the previous one was a Langley. The ship is armed with torpedo bombers which need less time to reach the optimal spread when dropping torpedoes compared to other carriers, especially American carriers of the already existing branch. A single torpedo deals relatively low damage but enjoys high speed. Independence is also equipped with attack aircraft which fire a large number of HE rockets that have a good chance to starting fires. As for the ship's dive bombers, they have relatively low penetration fire chance values, but are numerous bounds per attack in flight. The ship will have access to one standard squadron and 2 tactical squadrons, which will have a jet-assisted takeoff. Additionally, Independence can call upon a patrol fighter which can lock on quickly to enemy squadrons, but suffers from a relatively low spotting range, similar to BN's fighter. As a result, these fighters take on more defensive and intercepting role. But before Tier 8 goes on in this upcoming U.S. aircraft carrier Tech 3 line, the Independence will not have access to a smoke curtain generator consumable. Although widely considerable recognizes since I've returned the game back in early 2020. Independence was a tier 6 at the time before on the update 0.8.0. Right before she was removed the spotlight and replaced by Ranger as a tier 6, formerly as tier 7. Okay, I made it recognized for a long time since the early 2020 that I played on, but in which will replaced by Ranger at some point. Okay, so here are the parameters for the American aircraft carrier Independence. Hit points is about 40,200. There are the some parameters of the aircrafts are the following, so I do not read it for the while. They are consumables. They are the same consumables comes for the American aircraft carriers from a predecessor tier 4 Langley. Alright, so the next one goes on the Pan-Asian cruiser Tianjin. Tianjin is armed with 9 220mm main battery guns which have good ballistics, accuracy, and shell penetration, but a deal low damage per minute. The ship has a good armor, large HP pool, but a low maneuverability. Consumables are represented by the fast damage control team, repair party, and a choice between fighter spotting aircraft in the same slot. Good precision is essential for Tianjin to unlock her full potential. Since the maneuverability of the ship is lacking, it might not be so easy to escape unfavorable situations. Consistently landing your salvos from a medium distance would be considered optimal gameplay for Tianjin. However, good survivability helps this ship to take more damage than an average cruiser, which can help Tianjin prevail in certain close combat situations. Although the ship was named after the city in China that does belong to the People's Republic of China's Navy. Okay, so Tianjin describes as the ship's appearance is regal, but her parameters will also gonna be changed, so I will look upon the parameters. But essentially, this was a similar, so I don't mind about that. So let's head on the ship's parameters. The hit points is the 50,500. Fire duration is about 30 seconds. Main batteries consist 3x3 220mm that fire range 19.3 kilometers. What are only recommended like same techniques for Soviet heavy cruisers is to fire AP shell damage. Although it can fire HE shell damage, which is gonna be a low damage per second. But in this ship we're gonna be fire HE optimal against destroyers. So unlike Riga, so here are the consumables. They will use the limited damage control party or fast damage control team, which was similar for its Sevastopol. The repair party, which is going to be featured. Some fighter and Spartan aircrafts are available in the third slot, but in this ship does not have use a surveillance radar. So for now, this is gonna be a contrast like now is the similar for Riga. Next one is the American battleship Rhode Island. A battleship based on one of the variants of the 1938 fast battleship design, but with alternative set of main battery weaponry. The ship's main armament consists of 356mm guns, originally planned for development in 1937 for the North Carolina class battleships. The ship is named after the U.S. state of Rhode Island, one of the first U.S. states, and inherits the name from old pre-dreadnought battleship that was scrapped in the interwar years. Rhode Island is armed with 12 356mm main battery guns, a rather low caliber for a tier that have decent accuracy thanks to improved dispersion, and AP shells with improved ricochet angles. The ship is also armed with a large number of relatively fast-firing secondary guns, but has overall low survivability for its class and tier. However, consumables are the strong suit of the ship, as she is equipped with a enhanced repair party consumable with a reduced reload time, a choice between fighter, Spartan aircraft, or surveillance radar in the same slot, and engine boost on a separate slot. Rhode Island's gameplay is closer to that of a battlecruiser style, as she is mobile and she can be very effective against destroyers and lightly armored ships, thanks to her accurate and fast fighting guns. In close combat situations, these ships can maneuver through enemy torpedoes, while her secondary guns can also deal good damage, and her surveillance radar consumable can provide version even through smoke screens, making it difficult for enemy ships to hide. Due to her small HP pool and weak armor, it is not recommended to engage in open confrontations against other battleships or to engage in extended fights against other ships. Rhode Island, in contrast, is the same similar comes from Tier 7 Florida. But in these instances, she has a surveillance radar and much of the fighter Spartan aircraft in the third slot. But I'll always recommend in this ship is going forward is the surveillance radar. But I recommend it for that this ship is gonna need a surveillance radar mod 1 for increases action time, allowing them to spot enemy destroyers and cruisers while on smoke. Alright, so the hit points is going to be the same hit points like Georgia. Main battery is going to be 3x4, 356mm. Fighting range is about 21 kilometers. AP shell damage is about 9,500. Reload time is 25 seconds. It is the fastest reload time for this ship. Against Florida is the slowest reload time. Secondary armaments, which is good for the 7.5 kilometers, but I do not retrospect for that a secondary build on purpose. The other consumables are going to be available in the ship. They are damage control party, repair party, and the engine boost. The last three goes forward the surveillance radar, fighter, and the Spartan aircraft in the fourth slot. All stats are listed with our crew and upgrade modifiers. The stats are subject to change during the testing. But we will see up ahead the Rhode Island in the public test servers right now. So Rhode Island is a retrospectively comes a American battleship Florida on tier 7. Okay, so let's head on for the another Warships DevBlogs right now in the closed test 12.11. So waiting here. Okay, so new ships in closed test 12.11 was posted on November 6, 2023, 3 a.m. at the closing stages of the update 12.10, right? The 12.9. Yes, 3 new ships will be added for testing in update 12.11. Read on to take the first look at the gameplay features and learn more about the origins and history of the ships. The Tier 7 British destroyer Jupiter 42, which means Jupiter is a member of the AJ class destroyers, probably well-known Jervis. Jupiter, meanwhile, was named after the Roman god, equivalent to the Greek god of Zeus. The best ships of the type in the Royal Navy before the war. Commencing her service shortly before the outbreak of Second World War. The ship would serve in both the Home Fleet and Mediterranean Fleet. From December 1941 onwards, Jupiter played a role in Allied operations in Southeast Asia. However, on February 27, 1942, the destroyer was lost to a mine explosion during the Battle of Java Sea. Similar to her sister ship Jervis, Jupiter is armed with 6 120mm guns. She has improved characteristics in the form of better reload, improved AP ricochet angles, and longer range torpedoes, but in exchange has only one torpedo launcher, low damage per torpedo, less fire chance of her HE shells, and worse concealment. Jupiter will play effectively as a second-line destroyer, helping her sturdier compatriot dual enemy destroyers. Her gun power can also be put to good use harassing enemy capital ships, but captains will want to be careful as she lacks killing power in the form of torpedoes to finish them off. Here are the ship's parameters. Is the same parameters comes from Jervis. With her consumables is the same, but she's the only destroyer that can equip with engine boost, similarly on Gallant, but she's the only British destroyer that can access engine boost consumable, unlike on British destroyers of the territory that does not have an engine boost. Also, that always in this ship is the short-range high-security search, since the introduction of the British destroyers on tier 6, Icarus. Next one is the Japanese destroyer Minigumo. Minigumo is a member of the Asashio class destroyer commissioned in 1938. Throughout the War of the Pacific, Minigumos engaged in invasion operations in Malaya, the Philippines, and Dutch East Indies, modern-day Indonesia. She took part in the Battle of the Java Sea and the famously known Tokyo Express runs. On March 5, 1943, during one of those transport runs, Minigumo was sunk by the U.S. task force in the Blackett Strait, known to be as the Battle of the Blackett Strait. In most regards, Minigumo will be quite similar to her sister Asashio. Captains will recognize her slow traversing, slow reloading main battery of 6 127mm guns, which nevertheless can pack a punch in short engagements. Her main armament can be considered her torpedo barrel of 2 quadruple launchers. While in game, Minigumo will be able to freely swap between 2 different varieties of torpedo. One will be long range, but slow speed and easy to detect, while the other will be incredibly fast and harder to spot, but with extremely short range. Although this is similarly contrast from supership is the Yamagiri, yes, the Super Shimakase. Both captains will enjoy using F3 torpedoes on Shimakase in Yugumo to make point-blank attacks will find themselves at home with this ship. She will be best played by using her great stealth to make undetected attacks from close range, but can fall back on her longer range torpedoes when necessary. Captains should beware enemy destroyers and keep an eye on cruisers, as her slow speed and poor damage per minute can get her in trouble when forced to fight these opponents in the open. The ship's parameters is gonna be the same hit points like for Asashio. The parameters in this which is going to be the same thing like Asashio. Unlike the consumables she's the only Japanese destroyer that do not have a torpedo reload booster, but instead the regular ones when you need it. The damage control party, smoke generator, and engine boost. Next one is Italian battleship Sicilia. Battleship Sicilia takes her name from the famous island in southern Italy, as well as the swift and mighty ironclad of the same name, which served in the Reggio Marina at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. But ship was named after the island of Sicily. So the battleship Sicilia is named after the island, which was part of Italy, with the island capital of Palermo. As a sister ship to the Cristoforo Colombo, Sicilia will share the same main armament of 4 quadruple 381mm turrets. As key differences, Sicilia has a longer duration and quicker reloading assault smoke generator, better reload on her main battery, and a complement of secondary guns will fire SAP. To even out these differences, HE will replace SAP for her main battery. This is the first time the Italian battleship comes forward with the use of the HE and AP shells, but in just like Marco Polo in instances. But the secondaries, meanwhile, this time will be via sap shells. We do not use HE shells, unlike the Cristoforo Colombo. Captains helming the Sicilia into battle will wish to factor in her high surface detection and play conservatively in the early game. Preserving HP for later on is important for seizing the opportunity to close with the enemy and her use sap secondaries, which is prioritized the secondary build. The improved assault smoke generator will assist in both the early and late games by allowing high speed maneuverability in smoke while evading or charging into bring secondary barrels to bear. The ship's parameters comes forward is the same hit points on the Cristoforo Colombo. Firing range is about 80.9 kilometers. The Sigma is going to be a low accuracy style. Similarly counts for the Italian battleships Tet 3. A secondary armament which is going to be featured to be used on sap shells but not on HE shells. Consumables we got is a same consumable comes from Cristoforo Colombo. But in these instances, the enhanced assault smoke generator, which can vary greatly when charging upon, but do not fire the main battery while doing on the secondary barrels to be worked on, as well as maintain retreat. Okay, so I'm finally conclude the close test 12.10 so far. So let's head on for the next one. Okay, so the new ship's close test 30.0, which is going to be the latest World of Warships development blog since recently involvement, was posted on December 1 about 2 a.m. midnight in Philippine Standard Time. Okay, greetings captains. Update 13.0 brings it with new ships for testing, such as the Spanish battleship Victoria, German light cruiser Wiesbaden, and the long-awaited Tet 3 branch, the Commonwealth cruisers. The new Commonwealth cruiser branch features ships from Australia, India, New Zealand, and Canada. At low and mid tiers, these ships will be light cruisers armed with 152mm guns, and beginning at tier 8, they will receive a heavy armament of 203mm guns. They were known to be heavy cruisers. Their main battery will be capable of dishing out a good amount of damage per minute, but in return will have somewhat poor shell ballistics and slow turret traverse. Starting with tier 3, they will additionally be armed with torpedoes. At tier 7, these torpedoes have become long range and may even be launched for stealth due to excellent concealment of these ships. For captains interested in hunting submarines, from tier 5 onwards, the ASWS tri ships will have improved features, longer range, additional charges, and increased splash radius for incapacitating modules. However, they will deal somewhat less damage in return. The improved features to this line will be balanced out by generally weak armor, low HP pulls, and weak aid defenses. As a standard for most cruisers, the line will be feature hydroacoustic surge, available on its own slot at tier 4, and sharing a slot with defensive AFI at later tiers. The starting tier 5, the signature Commonwealth chlorine smoke generator will also be available in its own slot, with its long action time allowing some movement while remaining concealed. Starting at tier 8, the ships will be equipped with a repair party of standard characteristics. In battle, these characteristics will come together in a mid to close range play style. The chlorine smoke generator coupled with their excellent concealment will allow the ships to take aggressive positions and make best use of the good damage per minute, while also being able to conduct successful retreats when in danger. Captains will want to avoid exchanging fire or open waters, however, due to overall low survivability. In these cases, the long-range torpedoes may be employed while repositioning. The starting one is a Commonwealth cruiser Suitleg at tier 1. Suitleg is one of the Black Swan class sloops built in Great Britain, specifically for the Royal Indian Navy. During the Second World War, she took an active part in military operations in the Mediterranean in the waters of Indian Ocean. After India granted independence from the UK, the ship became part of the Indian Navy, in which she served until the end of the 1970s. The name of the ship thus that is named after the Suitleg River, which comes from Wait, I'm gonna need to search on it. Okay, so the Suitleg River is the location of the river was on the India, which is the name on it from its ship. Okay, the ship's parameters, it looks like the parameters will be the same, comes from a Black Swan. You know about that, the tier 1 British cruiser. The consumables is only for a damage control party. Now, the next one is a Commonwealth cruiser, Port Jackson. Port Jackson is one of town-class cruisers built in 1910s in several different cities in Great Britain and Australia. Conceived to aid in trade protection. She was named after the place where the city of Sydney was founded. Ship's parameters is going to be the same techniques coming from Weymouth, 20,300. So the first time comes in the example Weymouth, the tier 2 British cruiser. She has a repair party for that. But in this Commonwealth cruiser though, she doesn't have a repair party this time. Next one is a tier 3 Commonwealth cruiser Caladog. Caladog is a Caledon class cruiser that took part in the First World War and several other conflicts. In the late 1920s, she served at the North American and West Indian stations. During the early stages of the Second World War, Caladog was based in Canada, participating in Allied operations in the North Atlantic. Even though the cruiser actually served under the British flag, Caladog will represent the Royal Canadian Navy in game due to her service record. Okay, so the name of this ship, which is gonna be explained. Okay, so Caladog is named after the Caladog Verechas. It was a semi-legendary ancestor to the kings of Gwent, which is he may have lived during the 5th or 6th century. He is remembered in the Battle of Britain as the Knights of the Round Table under the name King Carados and Carados Brave Bloods. Although the ship was named after the famously known Caladog Verechas, the semi-legendary ancestors of the King of Gwent, which is once called it the present-day Wales, in the part of the UK. So Caladog is a member of the Caledon class cruisers at the time of the First World War. So which means the cruiser is the same headboards like on Caladon. But she's the only first time that she doesn't have a repair party. Okay, the next one is the Dunedin. Dunedin is a member of the Danae class light cruiser that served from 1924 to 37. She served in the New Zealand Division of the Royal Navy, which was the predecessor of Royal New Zealand Navy. During the Second World War, the cruiser took an active part in operations in the Atlantic and capturing several enemy transports. On November 1941, Dunedin was sunk by the German submarine. Although the ship's parameter goes on, it's the same parameters comes from a tier 4 British light cruiser, Dunedin. But the name does, which is going to be explained. Okay, so the Dunedin was a member of the Danae class cruiser, where she was commissioned in the November 19, 1918 and commissioned September 13, 1919. Although she has been the only ship of the Royal Navy to bear the name Dunedin, although it was named after the capital of Scotland, generally anglicized as Edinburgh. Okay, so the next one is a Commonwealth cruiser, Delhi. Achilles, one of the Leander class cruiser, was commissioned to the Royal Navy in 1933. In 1936, she attached to the New Zealand Division of the Royal Navy and joined the newly re-established Royal New Zealand Navy in 1941. During the Second World War, the cruiser played a crucial role in the Battle of River Plate that took part in the Pacific Campaign. In 1948, Achilles transferred to the Indian Navy and was renamed Delhi. As INS Den Hill, the cruiser served for an additional 30 years in this time. So I will search right now on Wikipedia describe about this ship in this tier. In this tier 5 Commonwealth cruiser. Yes, INS Den Hill was C-74 as a member of the Leander class cruiser built for the Royal Navy in 1933 as HMS Achilles, which is named after the Greek warrior. And serving on the Royal New Zealand Navy in 1937. Although The ship was named after Delhi. The city was located in the India, although New Delhi was in capital at the time. Although after the India declared independence from the United Kingdom, and this ship would continue to serve as the Indian Navy at the time until she was decommissioned about in the 1970s. Next one, the Commonwealth cruiser Hubbard. HMAS Hubbard was commissioned to Royal Australian Navy in 1939 as one of the improved Leander-class cruisers. During the Second World War, she took part in Mediterranean campaign and operations in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. HMAS Hubbard was also present at the signing ceremony in Japan's surrender in Tokyo Bay. Although the ship was named after the city and the capital of Tasmania, which was part of Australia. Okay, so let's search on the HMAS Hubbard. That's not the one. Okay, so the HMAS Hubbard D63 was a modified of Leander-class light cruiser which served as in the Royal Australian Navy during the Second World War. That originally constructed for the Royal Navy as HMS Apollo, named after the Greek god. Yes, she was part of the Royal Australian Navy service at the time, and she was the only Australian ship that was in presence at the Tokyo surrender in September 2, 1945. The parameters thus on, but in contrast, the Tier 6 Hubbard is the same parameters like from Leander. The available consumables this time is the damage control party and hydroacoustic search this time, and defensive AA fire as well. But the first time as ever, this new consumable, crawling smoke generator. Okay, the crawling smoke generators, which is what the similarly comes for PERT, but the duration times of 102 seconds, about 10 seconds, radius about 450 meters, reload time 160 seconds. There will be a 3 charges. Next one is the Commonwealth cruiser Uganda. Uganda was named after a country located in Africa. Uganda, which entered Royal Navy service at the height of the Second World War, belonged to the second group of Fiji-class cruisers, known to be as Crown Colony-class cruisers. The ship took an active part that landed in Sicily and Italy. In the fall of 1944, the cruiser was transferred to Royal Canadian Navy and subsequently operated in the Pacific Ocean. So let's gonna see the research about the famously HMS Uganda. Okay, so HMS Uganda was named after a country which was a Fiji-class light cruiser, launched in 1941. Although the Fiji class was known to be as the Crown Colony class cruisers. Okay, she served in the Royal Navy during 1943 and 1944, including operations in the Mediterranean, and was transferred to Royal Canadian Navy as HMCS Uganda October 1944. When she was reactivated in Korean War 1942, she was renamed HMCS Quebec, named after the one of the Canadian states. She was decommissioned the last time in 1956 and scrapped in Japan in 1961. Although we may have to know about that this ship that did appear to see picture right now in the recently DevBlog for new ships so far, but I will look forward to it in the upcoming Warships DevBlogs for new ships. As I already know, the Commonwealth cruiser Uganda is the same parameters like a British light cruiser Fiji on Tier 7. The available consumables are the following, but despite without repair party consumable, but usually the same thing goes on its predecessor. Now, the next one is the Commonwealth cruiser Auckland, a Tier 8 named after the city of New Zealand. Cruiser Auckland, like the British Albemarle, is based on one of the heavy cruiser designs developed in Great Britain in 1940. This variant possessed 9 203mm guns as the main battery, raised in 3 gun turrets in a linear elevated configuration. The ship was named after the largest city of New Zealand and represents the Royal New Zealand Navy. Although Auckland is determined to be an Albemarle's cousin, with the same ornament, same armor, and same torpedo, but potentially watch out for this ship because highly citadel, which could possess a citadel hits. The Commonwealth cruiser Auckland is the same parameters goes on from the British Tier 8 heavy cruiser Albemarle, but this time around comes from a light cruiser turning into the heavy cruiser. The 203mm guns, the firing range is about 17.1 kilometers. Usually the HE shell damage is about 2,950 compared to that the British heavy cruiser counterpart is going to be the higher HE shell damage. It's available consumables in this time, but this time around will be added a repair party consumable. But in the absence of the fighter or spotting aircraft, in the similarity comes from a fashion in the British heavy cruisers. But it always does that the same consumables comes from its predecessor. But she's the only ship to be featured starting in this Tier 8 onwards on the Commonwealth cruisers that do not have a specialized repair teams. Now the next one is the Commonwealth cruiser Encounter. Encounter is a fast ship based on preliminary designs for a cruiser with a 203mm artillery, intended for construction at Australian shipyard in the 1920s. In terms of silhouette and layout, the project partly replicates the British Hawking class cruisers. The cruiser inherited its name from one of the first ships of the Royal Australian Navy, which means a protected cruiser launched back in 1902, and joined the newly formed Royal Australian Navy in the 1912. In contrast, Encounter is a modified project of the famously known Hawkins class cruiser, which means a heavy cruiser. Ship's parameters is gonna be the same, but as not usual related upgrade. The hit points is about 41,700. Named after consists 203mm 3x3. Firing range is about 17.5. The same parameters comes from its predecessor thus. But the consumables is going to be same thing ahead comes from its predecessor Auckland, which is going to be a variety of tactics. Some of these consumables is going to be the same thing as usual, but do not have a specialized repair teams, and then either spotting aircraft or catapult fighters. Finally, the top tier of the Commonwealth heavy cruiser Cerberus. Cerberus is a large seaworthy version of British County class cruiser with its more powerful ornament. The ship is named after one of the pioneers Australian Navy, built in the late 1860s for the Naval Forces colony of Victoria. She served in Australian waters for more than half of the century. But in reality, the Cerberus is named after the three-headed dog and a Hades pet companion. Essentially, this ship counts for a county class cruiser, most famously the Devonshire and London, which comes from a British heavy cruiser that goes on major designs. The hit points is a Cerberus, but does not relate it for Goliath. The hit points is about 47,300. Main battery is 4x3 203mm. Firing range is about 18.5 kilometers. Radio time is about 10.5. Sigma is gonna be 2.05. Although this is gonna be a same comparison does that the county class cruisers. Her consumables meanwhile, which is gonna be the top tier, is gonna be the same thing. Some of them which is the closed smoke generator, which is useful for that on Perth. But I did that happen last night when I encountered something the Commonwealth cruisers such as the Encounter as well as the Cerberus, the top tier of the Commonwealth heavy cruiser. But I will witness to see up ahead in early 2024 about the early access of Commonwealth cruisers after the American aircraft carriers in the Tech 3 line, which is going to be a second quarter on 2024. Now, the next one is a German light cruiser Wiesbaden, named after the city located in Thuringia. We Speeder is a hypothetical design for a light cruiser whose main armament is composed of a dual-purpose 128mm guns developed for the Kriegsmarine in early 1940s. The ship's naming follows the German Navy's traditional Navy cruisers in honor of members of the same type are sunk in combat. This original small cruiser, named after the capital of Grand Duchy Hesse, was lost during the Battle of Jutland on June 1, 1916. Wiesbaden is armed with 12 128mm main battery guns, which have higher damage per minute but on low range. Typical for German ships, her AP shells will deal high damage, with her HE shells feature improved penetration, but low shell damage and fire chances. Ship is also armed with a total of 12 torpedo tubes. This will launch torpedoes with good range and low visibility. While she has excellent concealment, Wiesbaden's drawbacks will include weak armor, low speed, and lackluster maneuverability. For her consumables, Wiesbaden will be equipped with a smoke generator in its own slot, similar to the one found on German destroyers, as well as a signature German hydroacoustic surge, which will share its slot with a defensive AE fire. Captains familiar with the C-52 destroyer line will feel at home with the ship due to her similar armament. Combination effective main battery torpedoes will allow for flexible gameplay options, while Wiesbaden's excellent concealment and smoke generator will enable her to take favorable positions for close-range combat. However, captains will need to be careful. Once spotted, it will be difficult for the ship to engage in open waters or escape from the enemy due to her slow speed and poor maneuverability. The cruiser's hit points is about 34,100. 6x2 128mm guns, fire range 15 kilometers. So it definitely fire both HE and AP shells in circumstances towards enemy ships. The Sigma is about 2.0, reload time is about 5 seconds. Consumables are only available, but is a damage control party, smoke generator, and a third slot between hydroacoustic search and defensive AFI. Yes, I encountered Wiesbaden in the public test server, which means kindly, you know about that, it's hard to penetrate on Citadel hits when I played St. Vincent at the time. Yes, this is gonna be as torpedoes, you know about that. So the range is about 9.5 kilometers and damage is about 14,400, which was cautious. You know about that when I encountered the ship for that in the public test. But I will look forward to see in the live server right now when the ship was supposed to be released in the future. Now, the Tier 9 Spanish battleship Vittoria. Vittoria is a fast battleship similar layout and characteristics to Italian ships of the Vittoria Veneto class. The possibility of building these battleships in Spain was discussed between the governments of the two countries in 1939 to 40. The implementation of these plans was prevented by the growing momentum of the Second World War and the state of the Spanish economy. This battleship, just like two ships of the line and a modern frigate of the Spanish Navy, carries the name Vittoria in the honor of the character made history by being the first ship to circumnavigate the world. Okay, this is the first time the Vittoria features Vittoria is the only feature at this time which is going to be used in alternative fire mode, or simply a burst fire mechanics comes from Spanish cruisers. Now, Vittoria is armed with 9 381mm main battery guns which have long range but a long reload time. She'll also feature a new unique mechanic, alternative Chev types. At any point in the battle, captains will be able to choose between two fighting modes. The standard mode, in which her shells will deal high damage with high fight chance for HE shells. In return, the shells will have quite poor ballistics, require extensive lead time for fast targets or targets at long range. Thus, the standard fighting mode is best used either in short range engagements or against slowly moving ships. Now, in the alternative fighting mode, in which her shells will have greatly improved ballistics, allowing for easier leading of fast ships or ships at range. However, this fighting mode will have reduced shell damage and reduced fire chance for HE shells compared to the standard fighting mode. Captains will want to use this mode primarily for long-range gunnery or for engaging fast targets. It is important to note that despite the radical difference in the velocity